By 1941, the skies over the vast, frozen Eastern Front were a brutal, Darwinian battlefield. In the opening days of Operation Barbarossa, the German Luftwaffe, with its technologically superior Messerschmitt Bf-109s and its battle-hardened Experten, aces veterans of the Spanish Civil War and the Battle of Britain had sliced through the Soviet Red Air Force, the VVS. Thousands of Soviet planes, many of them obsolete, were destroyed on the ground before they ever had a chance to fly. For the Soviet Union, this was a war of desperation, a war of victory or death, a war for the very survival of their nation. Outnumbered, outflown, and outmatched, Soviet pilots were forced to rely on raw courage, suicidal bravery, and a tactic that chilled the blood of their German adversaries. One of these pilots was a 21-year-old lieutenant named Boris Khavzin, a young man from the town of Shakhty. He was not yet a legend. He was just one of thousands of young, committed, and frankly terrified Soviet pilots thrown into the meat grinder. He was stationed near Moscow, tasked with defending the capital itself as the German war machine advanced to its very gates. Worse, he was flying an antiquated Polikarpov I-15 biplane, a plane with two wings, an open cockpit, and fabric-covered wings, a relic that belonged in a different decade. He was being asked to fly this 1930s machine, which couldn't even catch the German bombers, against the deadliest fighter plane in the world, the Bf-109. It was in this crucible that he learned to fly and to kill. In the most demanding classroom on Earth, in the Red Air Force, there was a tactic known as the Terran, or aerial ramming. This was not the same as a kamikaze attack, which was a guaranteed suicide mission that would come later in the Pacific. The Terran was a desperate, last-ditch gamble, taught to pilots as a final option when their guns were empty or jammed. The goal was to use the propeller or the wing of their own sturdy, simple plane to shear off the tail or control surfaces of the more fragile, high-performance German aircraft that attempt to fly their own damaged machine home. The rugged, almost agricultural, construction of Soviet planes, designed for rough airfields, made this just barely possible. Most who attempted it did not return. It was a tactic born of pure, cold desperation and a total, burning refusal to let the enemy escape. On October 29, 1941, during the desperate Battle of Moscow, Khavzin was on patrol in his I-15 biplane. He spotted a German Messerschmitt Bf-110 Zerstrer, a heavy, twin-engine fighter bomber, likely on a reconnaissance mission. He engaged it, and in the twisting dogfight, he emptied his machine guns into the enemy plane. But his own biplane was also hit, and his guns clicked empty. The German plane, damaged but still flying, was trying to escape, to limp back to its base with its vital information. Khavzin, filled with a cold rage and refusing to let the enemy get away, made his choice. He pushed his throttle forward and flew his small biplane directly into the enemy, using his propeller to chop the tail of the Bf-110. The German plane, its controls severed, spiraled to the earth. The impact was catastrophic, a shredding, metallic scream. Khavzin's biplane was shattered, its engine dead, its propeller bent and useless. He was forced to crash land in a frozen, snow-covered field not far from the burning, black wreckage of his victim. Incredibly, he survived with only minor injuries. He climbed out of his plane, dusted himself off, and as legend has it, began the long walk back to his airbase. His commanders were stunned. He had not only performed the Terran, a feat of legendary bravery, but he had walked away from it. He was given a new plane and a medal. It would not be the last time. His reputation began to grow. The Bush Telegraph of the air bases buzzed with his name. He was that pilot, the one who had rammed a German and lived. He was transferred to a new unit, a sign of his growing value, and was given a more modern Yak-1 fighter. This was a huge step up, a faster, more capable, single-wing aircraft with a closed cockpit and a cannon. It showed that the VVS was learning, adapting, and producing new machines. The war had moved on, and in the bitter cold of February 1942, near Novgorod, the scenario repeated itself. The stakes were even higher, as he was now part of the desperate struggle to relieve the besieged city of Leningrad. Kovzen was scrambled to intercept a flight of German bombers. He was defending a crucial railway bridge, a vital artery for supplies feeding the hungry front. He entered a furball of German Ju-88 bombers and their fighter escorts. He shot down one bomber, its wing shearing off in a spray of flame. But in the ensuing melee, he again found himself out of ammunition, bearing down on a German bomber that had slipped through his defenses. The Ju-88 was lining up its bombing run, its bomb bay doors opening, about to drop its payload on the vital bridge, with no bullets left. Kovzen had only one weapon, his airplane. He didn't hesitate. He dove from above, aiming his wing at the bomber's tail. The collision was brutal. The yak's wing sheared the German's tail plane clean off. The heavy bomber, now uncontrollable, cartwheeled into the ground and exploded in a massive fireball, its bombs detonating on the empty steppe far from the bridge. Kovzen's Yak-1 was mangled, its wing shredded and twisted, the controls fighting him. But the engine, a testament to Soviet engineering, still roared. He fought the plane, nursing the crippled machine back toward his own lines, and crash-landed it, skidding on the ice of his own airfield. Now, the legend was confirmed. It wasn't a fluke. He had done it twice. The ground crews who pulled him from the wreck, expecting a dead man, instead found a grinning, bloody pilot who simply asked for a cigarette. Now, he was a living legend. Twice he had done the unthinkable and survived. But the war raged on, growing more intense. In July 1942, Kovzen, now an experienced ace, was in a dogfight with two German Bf-109s. This was not a clumsy bomber. This was the big league. A fight with the Luftwaffe's deadliest single-engine fighter. In the twisting, high G turn, his guns jammed. This was a death sentence. One of the 109s, piloted by an expert, was on his tail, its tracers flashing past his cockpit. He was dead. But instead of trying to escape, he did the one thing the German pilot couldn't predict. He used his plane as a weapon. He threw his Yak into a violent, skidding turn, deliberately slamming his own aircraft into the German fighter. The impact was explosive. The German plane was obliterated, its wing torn off, and it fell to earth. Kovzen's Yak was too damaged to fly. He was forced to bail out, his first time. He parachuted into Soviet-held territory, wounded by shrapnel, but alive. He had now rammed two fighters and a bomber and survived all three. His commanders were speechless. He was becoming a symbol, a propaganda hero for a nation that desperately needed one. He was the immortal Falcon. He was awarded the Order of Lenin. But the war was far from over. A full year passed. By August 1943, the tide was turning. The Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history, had just been won, and the air war was a constant. Swirling chaos involving thousands of planes, the Soviets were now on the offensive. Kovzen, now a captain and a decorated hero of the Soviet Union, was flying the new, powerful Lavokin La-5. This was one of the best fighters of the entire war. He was an ace of aces, a man other pilots followed into hell, believing he was indestructible. On August 13, 1943, that belief would be put to its final, terrible test. He was leading his squadron on an escort mission when they were bounced by a large formation of German fighters and Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers. The sky erupted into a furball, a massive, swirling dogfight with dozens of planes. In the chaos, Kovzen's plane was hit by cannon fire from a 109. His instrument panel shattered. A 20mm shell fragment tore into his right eye, instantly blinding him. His cockpit began to fill with smoke and flames. He was in agony. His plane was dying, and he was blind. Kovzen was now blind in one eye. His plane was on fire, and he was losing consciousness. Below him, he saw a German Ju-87 Stuka lining up a dive-bombing run on a Soviet ground position. He was out of ammo, or his guns were destroyed. It didn't matter. With his last ounce of strength, he put his burning La-5 into a dive. He didn't just clip the Stuka. He rammed it head-on. It was an act of pure, final defiance, a pilot's last bullet. The explosion was massive, a bright, terrible flash that consumed both planes. The explosion was total, obliterating both planes instantly. Kovzin was not in his plane. He was in the explosion. He was thrown clear from the wreckage, a human torch, unconscious, his body on fire. He plummeted from 20,000 feet, in a miracle that defies all physics and logic. His parachute, damaged and partially melted, deployed, though not fully. It didn't save him. It just slowed him down enough. He fell, not in a gentle drift, but in a desperate, tangled drop, slamming into a swamp at high speed. Soviet partisans, who had witnessed the incredible mid-air explosion, raced to the crash site. They were looking for German pilots to kill, but they found Kovzin in the swamp. He was shattered. He had a broken jaw, a broken leg, a broken arm, and his right eye was gone. He was, for all intents and purposes, dead. But as they went to take his papers, he groaned. He was impossibly breathing. He spent the next 10 agonizing months in a hospital, a symbol of impossible survival. Boris Kovzin survived the war. He was too damaged to fly fighters again. But he had done the impossible. He was the only pilot in history to have performed for aerial rammings and lived to tell the tale. He became a living legend, the immortal Falcon, a man who had met death for times in the sky and refused to shake its hand. His story became a testament to the unyielding, terrifying, and almost supernatural resilience of the human spirit in the face of total war. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, hit the like button and subscribe for more daily content.